It's October 21st, 1942. A Navy admiral rushes through the doors of the White House, late for a meeting with President Franklin Roosevelt. The reason for his delay: bad weather over the Chesapeake. But the real reason for his visit is something far more dangerous than any storm. The largest amphibious invasion America has ever attempted. Rear Admiral Henry Kent Hewitt is about to learn the details of Operation Torch, a mission that will send more than 100,000 American soldiers across the Atlantic Ocean to invade North Africa. Most of these men have never seen combat. Many of their officers have never commanded troops in battle. And in less than 3 weeks, they'll be storming hostile beaches, thousands of miles from home. This is the story of how America's army went to war for the very first time in World War II. By the fall of 1942, America had been at war for nearly a year since Pearl Harbor. But there was one problem. American ground forces hadn't yet fought a major battle against the Axis powers, while U.S. Marines were locked in brutal combat across the Pacific. The Army was still training, still preparing, still building itself into a fighting force. That was about to change. President Franklin Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill made a critical decision. Before invading Hitler's fortress Europe, the Allies would strike first in North Africa. The targets were French Morocco and Algeria, territories controlled by Vichy France, a government that collaborated with Nazi Germany after France's defeat in 1940. The plan was bold, maybe even reckless. American troops would land at 3 points along the coast: Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers. The hope? That the French wouldn't fight, that they'd welcome the Americans as liberators, not invaders. But hope wasn't a strategy. Would the French resist? Would German U-boats sink the invasion fleet before it ever reached Africa? Would America's untested army crumble under fire? Rear Admiral Hewitt, a quiet, thoughtful officer who'd spent most of his career far from combat, now carried enormous responsibility. He commanded Task Force 34. His mission: land nearly 34,000 soldiers on the beaches of Morocco. Successfully, and without British help, because Roosevelt feared that lingering French hatred toward Britain after a British attack on French ships in 1940 could turn the landings into a bloodbath. This would be an American show, an American gamble. On October 22nd, Hampton Roads, Virginia, became a scene of controlled chaos. More than 100 ships crowd the harbor: battleships, cruisers, destroyers, transport vessels packed with soldiers and supplies. Sailors worked around the clock, stripping ships of anything flammable, loading ammunition, fuel, and rations. Stalking the docks was Major General George S. Patton. Theatrical, profane, aggressive. Patton barked orders, inspiring fear and confidence in equal measure. He told his officers, "I will leave the beaches either a conqueror or a corpse." He meant it. But beneath the bravado, serious problems festered. Training had been rushed. Many units had never practiced amphibious landings. Supplies were loaded haphazardly, sometimes onto the wrong ships. Communication systems were untested, and the weather forecast for Morocco was grim: heavy surf, dangerous waves that could swamp landing craft before a single shot was fired. Still, on October the 23rd and 24th, the Armada set sail. More than 100 ships, carrying America's hopes across 4,500 miles of dangerous ocean. For 12 long days, the convoy sailed eastward. German U-boats prowled the shipping lanes. Enemy reconnaissance planes could appear at any moment. Below deck, soldiers lived in cramped quarters. Seasick, nervous, they played cards to pass the time. They wrote letters home, letters that might be their last. Admiral Hewitt wasn't just navigating the ocean, he was navigating a minefield of military politics. He clashed with Air Force officers over support. He worried about the untested landing craft. He studied tide tables and reconnaissance photos of Moroccan beaches late into the night. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, a secret mission was unfolding. Major General Mark Clark, Eisenhower's deputy, slipped toward the Algerian coast aboard a British submarine called HMS Seraph. Under cover of darkness, Clark and a small team paddled ashore to meet Vichy French generals, hoping to negotiate a peaceful landing. It failed. The French were divided, confused, unwilling to commit. Local police nearly arrested the Americans. Clark and his men hid in a wine cellar, then paddled frantically back through heavy surf, losing equipment in the waves. They escaped, barely. And the intelligence they brought back was troubling. Some French units might stand down, others would fight to the death. Nobody really knew. By November 7th, the invasion fleet loomed off the Moroccan coast. Patton issued his final orders. Aggressive and uncompromising. Advance inland quickly, seize airfields, crush resistance. No delays, no hesitation. Admiral Hewitt made his final calculations. The surf was brutal. 12-foot waves slammed the beaches. Landing craft could capsize. Men could drown before ever facing the enemy. Aboard the transports, soldiers cleaned their rifles one last time, sharpened bayonets, tried and failed to sleep. At midnight, loudspeakers crackled to life. Now hear this. Land the landing force. The moment had arrived. In the pre-dawn darkness of November 8th, 1942, landing craft were lowered into the churning Atlantic. Soldiers climbed down cargo nets, weighted by rifles, ammunition, rations, and fear. At 4 a.m., the boats turned toward shore. Some craft got lost, others swamped and sank. Men drowned, dragged under by heavy gear. Units landed miles from their objectives. Radios failed, orders conflicted. Chaos reigned. But the men kept coming, wave after wave. And then something unexpected happened. On many beaches, the French didn't fight. There were scattered shots, a few skirmishes. But many French soldiers simply watched, confused, uncertain. By dawn, American troops were pushing inland. Patton came ashore, furious at the disorder, energized by the fight. The invasion of North Africa had begun. Back home, Americans woke to stunning headlines. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, American ground forces were on the offensive, not defending, attacking. The news electrified the nation. After months of defeat, from Bataan to the Coral Sea, this was proof that America was hitting back. Factories doubled production. Families gathered around radios. Church bells rang in small towns across the country. But it was also a moment of uncertainty. These were America's sons, teenagers from Iowa farms, factory workers from Detroit, college boys from California, facing real combat for the first time. Would they measure up? Operation Torch was more than a military operation. It was a test of American resolve, American courage, American identity. For Hewitt, there was no turning back. For Patton, there was only forward. For the thousands of young Americans running toward the unknown, there was only this moment, the first step into battle. They were no longer training. They were at war. In the cramped quarters of transport ships crossing the Atlantic, young soldiers tried to imagine what combat would be like. They'd seen training films. They'd heard stories from World War I. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare them. Admiral Hewitt later reflected, "You do everything you can. Then you hope for the best. Hope, preparation, courage. That's what they carried across the Atlantic. Not certainty, not guarantees, just belief. The North African campaign would last 7 months. Many of those men wouldn't live to see its end. But in that dark pre-dawn moment, as the first waves turned toward shore, America's army took its first true step into World War II. The road ahead would be long, bloody, brutal. But it started here, with an army at dawn, sailing toward an uncertain shore, ready to prove itself in battle for the very first time. This was Operation Torch. And for the United States Army, this would not be preparation. This would not be training. This would be America's first real step into World War II.